If you're just starting to learn JavaScript, there's one concept that's going to run the show, and it's called functions. You're going to see it in every application, every tutorial, every project, but most people don't have a good understanding of what exactly a function does. So in this video, we're going to break down what is a function, how to actually write and use them. And by the end of the video, you'll be able to write your own custom functions that's going to be able to return whatever value that you need in order for your project to be successful. So we'll start with the basics. What exactly is a function? A function is a reusable block of code that operates just like a machine. You'll write that function once and you'll be able to use it wherever you want throughout the project. To give a quick example of what exactly the syntax looks like for a function, you start with the exact key name, which is function. Then you'll follow it up by the name of whatever you want to call the function. In this example, it's going to be greet. You'll follow it with parentheses that we'll get back to later, and then you'll include the curly braces. Inside of those curly braces is basically where you're telling the function what exactly it's going to do when it's called. In this example, we're going to log hello to the console. Just like that, we've written a function, and it is just that simple. Well, we've written it, but we haven't actually called it. In order to call a function, you include the name of that function followed by parentheses. In this example, the greet function is going to log hello to the console. So once we call it, as you can see, we now have hello logged into the console. And that's all it takes in order to write a function and call a function. So now you may be wondering, I see these parentheses included with the function. What exactly does it do? So that's a great question. Function power comes in when we can send data to the function and allow it to give it some custom information. So we'll start by saying, hey, we have a function named greet, and I want to pass something inside of the parentheses. What we pass inside of the parentheses is called a parameter. So now in this example, let's utilize the function named greet with the data passed in of name. Once we log it to the console, we'll see that we now have hello, including the name that we just passed into that function as a parameter. The cool thing about this is we can use this multiple times throughout the project. So let's just say we're coding an application and we want to greet this user multiple times once they logged in as unauthenticated and logged in as authenticated. We don't have to create a special function for that. We're able to use this exact same function multiple times throughout the project, which is going to make your code that much easier, that much cleaner, and it'll also function a lot better because we're not writing the same block of code over and over multiple times throughout the project. So functions also have the ability to return a value, not just print information to the screen. Let's go ahead and create a function named add, and this example is going to take two parameters, a and b. Inside of the curly braces, we're going to return a plus b. So whatever you pass into the function named add, whether it be 1 and 2, 5 and 6, whatever you pass in, once that function is called, it's going to automatically add the two numbers that we pass into the parameters as arguments for this function. So in this example, we'll create a const named result, set it equal to add, which is the parameter, which is the function that we just created. We'll pass in two numbers, 4 and 6. And then once we log this to the console after it's called, you'll see that the result is actually 10 because 4 plus 6 is 10. The return statement is going to give us that function output. And as I mentioned, you can use this throughout multiple places in the application. We don't have to rewrite this same block of code over and over and over. So now that you have a good understanding of what functions are, let's begin to even shorten that syntax to make it easier for you to write, cleaner for you to read. So let me introduce you to something called an arrow function. An arrow function essentially does the exact same thing that the prior function does or a normal function does. It just reduces the amount of code that's needed to be written so that you don't have to write so much code to get the same thing done. So here on screen, we'll create a const named multiply, and we'll set it equal to the parentheses. The parentheses will take two parameters, a and b. We'll include the arrow right after the parentheses, and inside of the curly braces, we're going to return a times b because the name of this function is multiply, and any parameters that we pass in, we want to be able to multiply that. Just like that, we're able to get the exact same thing done. If we log it to the console, you'll see that it's going to multiply those numbers. Once you're ready to really become more advanced, you can even shorten the syntax even more than that. In this example, let's create a const named double. We'll set it equal to x. With the arrow, we're going to return x times 2. So whatever x is, once we call double, we're going to multiply that number times 2. We basically get the exact same result. It's just a shorter way to write the same thing so that you're not having to write so much code. So as you can see, functions are kind of like the foundation of, or the heartbeat of every JavaScript application. They can handle clicks, update the UI, process data, talk to APIs, do pretty much anything that you need for them to do. So with that, if you have a good understanding of a function, you know how to call it, you know that we can pass parameters into it, and we can also return values. So now that you understand how to define a function, how to call it, how to pass parameters into it, and return values back, you're ready to start building some really cool projects. I'll see you in the next video.